This is the topic. It's primarily focusing on maintenance and sustenance projects. There are other environments in our organization where we have applied CCPM, but what we're going to discuss is this one right now. Now, this is more or less what I'll be covering today. Let's go on to information on Tata Steel. Of course, we have our own mines. And then from mines, there are certain sinter plants. The complicated name is calcium ferrite, but we actually half cook the rocks into something that's more palatable. And then you have coal, which is converted into coke. These are the plants. The unit of measurement over here is million tons. And all of them get into what is known as the blast furnace. And there, everything is melted to what's known as hot metal. And after hot metal, it goes into in our company, it goes into two lines. It goes into the steel melting shop. These are the long products, flat products. What are flat products? Or the car bodies and washing machine bodies, they are all flat products. They are sheets. They look like blankets. And the long products are, what are these buildings made of? The construction bars and even the stapler pins. The mills, there are 3 rolling mills within Jamshedpur. There are a couple of mills in Singapore, Thailand, the rest of India, totaling about 7 or 8 of them. And this is what we produce out of it. In terms of flat products, there are 3 slab casters. It's a different type of a caster. Where you get solid steel and then you roll it into something called a hot strip mill. You convert it into strips. Let's first agree on the definition of, what we say when we say maintenance. It's periodic repair of components, and while producing, the mills and all get dirty, so we need to clean it. In terms of sustenance, it's maintenance basically, but then there are upgradations involved in terms to enhance capacity, to modify the mill for certain product requirements, and so on and so forth. Maintenance is a very interesting profession. It's hard work, highly skilled, rarely recognized. Okay, now it's actually a thankless job. What the expectation is, people want all the equipments to be running all the time. Now that's impossible as far as from a maintenance point of view. But then we buy machines to run them. We don't buy machines to repair them. So when did you hear last year somebody making this statement? Right. In terms of statistics, what do we do? There's about 9 to 10% downtime. That's about the max. Some plants have even 3 to 4% of planned downtime. What's the industry benchmark? That's actually not really important. The issue is to get the plant running always. And an increase of 1% availability leads to about $38 million in sales. Around that figure. In terms of sustenance project, here the conflict is always different. In fact, if you see a sustenance project, it's invariably this, that do we take down the plant to produce for future? And that's the growth rate of the steel industry today. And so there is a huge need to enhance capacity, or do we produce now to meet the present demand? That's always been the conflict. And so with CCPM, by reducing the time, not exactly CCPM, by reducing the time, what happens is the present demands get met to a higher degree. Now, in terms of to classify the maintenance sustenance projects, the type of projects that we have, I have tried classifying it in these 4 categories. Primarily from project management perspective, because the buy-in is very different. The buy-in needs are different for each of these categories. There is manage and execute ourselves, as well as then the second one is we manage ourselves but get experts to help us in execution. And then we also offload the entire project to an outside party. And I mean, there are some people over here. There's Ariva who's helped us a lot in some of our projects. In fact, one or two of the examples that I'll be citing has been done by Ariva. And then the work is coordinated by us. It's done by petty contractors, but managed by an external party. And then the second type of classification that we need to have is short-term, 5 days to 1 month, and long-term, 1 month to 1 year. We've been applying CCPM for about a year and a half now. So we really don't have any projects to show which are longer than 1 year. Right, what are the buy-in obstacles? Okay, in terms of buy-in, the first thing that we need to ascertain is nobody should be losing out by reducing the project duration. Now, in our environment, it's pretty okay because with the type of growth that we have, if a person wants to work, he cannot be jobless. Now, but then there are issues. I mean, if the project team becomes jobless, then there's no reason why they would complete the project early. In getting a buy-in, there are three things that we typically try to get on a buy-in of. The first one is time is not deterministic. And then the second one is in a series of dependent activities, some will happen early, some will happen late. And the third one is how to take advantage of early finishes. Now, typically when you would, or when I would be interacting with a group of people, you know, it's easy to understand this. But then there's a problem. There's what I call a knowing-doing gap. Now, what's a knowing-doing gap? This gentleman has a problem. I have a similar problem. We all know what it takes to get over it. How many of us land up doing this to get here? Now, there are two parts to this. One is the motivation. This is the motivation. If you get there, there's something for you. And the other part is what to change. What exactly to do differently that will get us there. And that's where I have seen, that's what gives us the maximum benefit in the whole thing. Now, what are the obstacles in terms of buying in manage and execute ourselves? There, all that is fine, a 50%, 90%, very nice. But that's not true for my project. They don't really see this 50-90% issue because not because they don't want to see. They would love to see it, but they can't see it. That's the whole issue. Now, teams find it difficult to relate to some of the activities completing early and some getting delayed. So you would, I mean, and one of the things that I've seen is if you pick up an example from some other project and try and convince this particular project team, there is no way, I mean, you've lost the team. You can't have a buy-in after that. So what we typically do is we take a very simple sequence of activities of that project and then explain how some of the activities can happen early, some of the activities can happen late. And of course, this is a statement that you'll often see, we always capitalize on early finishes. Now, manage ourselves but use external expertise. Now, typically we would be interacting with not the resource of the external expertise, but the supervisor of the external expertise. So what we ask them is, say, we give you 10 hours to complete this job. Will you go and tell the resource that he's got 10 hours to do the job? Now, it's invariably no. He will tell the supervisor something less. And of course, offload project, it's basically asking the project manager what his problems are. That's definitely given me. In terms of execution, This is what we do, issue resolution, staggering buffering, and then issues and buffer management. Preparation, we haven't done very well with preparation as such. Now, what are the issues in planning that we have? Now, resources, in this environment, resources are never well defined. It's very labor intensive. India, with its 1 billion plus, it's generally assumed that manpower can never be a constraint. But then we've seen in virtually every project, skilled manpower is a constraint, number one. Number two is, yes, there's a large population, but then it's a supply chain problem. You might not get the right person at the right place at the right time. Now that's another big problem, even though you have the person. Equipment resources can be considered, but it's not difficult to add a resource, equipment resource to this environment. Multitasking is often invisible. And I'll show you an example where multitasking was invisible till we actually put our foot down and said nothing doing. I mean, there is multitasking going on. And buy-in of aggressive times, this is again something that I'll show you as an example. And reorganizing people, I'll explain that as well as an example. Now, this is a BOC. It's an oxygen plant, 12 to 90 tons per day oxygen plant. So what was the project background? This is the cold box. This is where the oxygen and nitrogen and all separate out. And basically the problem was identify leaking points and then repair the leakages. It's a 54-meter tall column. This is what we did to find out where all the defects could happen. And then this was the original plan, to complete it in 30 days. The problem was this repair that gets done by aluminum welders. Now, aluminum welders are a rare commodity. We had only 2 of them, but in order to meet this plan, we needed 8 of them. So there was, and if we replan with 2 aluminum welders, then this is what we get to, about 6 weeks, and we needed to complete it in 4 weeks. What the project team actually expected was somewhere in between, these aluminum welders would jump from one area to the other and get the work done, which was actually too much of an expectation. So what we did, we changed the plan a little bit, and we decided that why can't we blank these and test these and repair this while this job still happens. So that way we actually completed this in 22 days. We had a plan of 25 days, we completed it in 22 days. Now this is again a boiler conversion. These are basically stoker fired boilers. This is the description of the boilers. And so we had to take these down, and we've been doing this project for since 2004, and we've been doing it on 6 boilers. So the first one that we did, this was before we adopted CCPM. The first one we did, this was a much smaller boiler. We completed it in 183 days. Of course, I mean, when you take up such an assignment for the first time, there is a lot of management focus. After that, we said, okay, we've been successful, let's try it out in more of them. The next 3 boilers actually took 328 days, 442 days, and 512 days. And you can, these more or less started at the same time. Then we decided to apply CCPM. Now, if you see, this part of the job takes about the same time, a very standardized process. It's this part of the job, the black patch, where actually work gets done. Now, these 2 boilers were taken up at the same time. We had only 15 boiler quality welders. When we said, okay, if we need to do this, we need 2 groups of 15 boiler quality welders each. So there were 30 boiler quality welders. We formed 2 groups out of them. And then we said, okay, these guys are not going to talk to each other. They're going to work completely independently. Now, that never happens. Out of the 30, some were not good. So, and you see these types of multitasking, it's never visible. You will never see all the 15 moving out from here and going over there. You'll find one of them goes over there, then the second one goes over there after some time, and they are working at different places in a big area. The third one of them goes, by the time you realize that people have shifted, half of them have already gone over there. So you bring them back again over here, you're back to square one. So this was followed by the other two boilers that we had, and we realized that this is where the problem was. We actually staggered release over here, and we finished it in 128 days. So that's the type of improvement that we are looking at, more or less the same nature of job. In execution in short duration project, shift changeovers are very, very important. Resources are normally all available. It's just that the right ones are not there at the right place. In terms of long duration projects, there are resource conflicts. Resources are not planned as per aggressive schedule, because sometimes these resources are brought in from other parts of the world and they are very expensive. In terms of, again, execution, that's one point that I want to focus on over here. You see, as long as work goes on okay, nobody talks about crushing time being unrealistic. But the moment you have a steep curve up, instant reaction is, these crush durations were not realistic. So it can't be done. So of course, that's where the project manager's role comes in. The results achieved last year, I mean, this is our financial year. We do it from April to March. Last year, we applied it in 14 maintenance projects and 4 sustenance projects. We got anything between 10 to 32% reduced durations. This is, of course, a cost accounting figure that you're looking at. That's $8.7 million US. In terms of long duration projects, this year in Q1 itself, we did this much with 5 to 27%. This 5% is basically last year we had applied CCPM, and further on that we had a shorter duration on some of the same projects. And about $4.7 million till now. The road ahead, we need to work on preparation. That's one area that we need to work on.